The night was warm in Dubai, a city of glass towers and golden lights. From the balcony of his penthouse, Khalid al-Rahman, a billionaire known for his sharp business sense, gazed down at the restless streets. Cars moved like streams of silver, and laughter drifted up from the night markets. But behind all the brightness, Khalid felt the weight of a hollow silence inside him. For years, he had built empires, real estate, oil, technology. His name was known in boardrooms across the world. Yet in his private life, he carried an emptiness. He had no family, no children to inherit his fortune, no laughter to soften the cold edges of his wealth. The older he grew, the more the silence pressed against him like an unwelcome guest. One evening, he received a discreet invitation. It was for a private auction held in an old villa, hidden behind carved wooden gates. The event was whispered about among the elite. Rare paintings, jewels, and even the promises of companionship were sometimes offered there. Khalid hesitated at first, but something in his chest, some longing he could not ignore, pulled him toward it. Inside the villa, the air smelled faintly of incense and polished wood. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over the room. Guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns filled the hall, their voices low, their eyes sharp with curiosity. On a raised stage, the auctioneer began, his voice smooth and practiced. At first, the items were ordinary for the wealthy: an emerald necklace, a rare bottle of wine, a carved ivory chess set. Then the tone shifted. A hush fell over the crowd as the auctioneer spoke words that surprised Khalid. Tonight, among the treasures, stands something more rare. A chance at legacy, a chance at life. And then she walked out. The woman was not dressed like the others. Her clothes were simple: faded jeans, a plain blouse. Her hair, the color of chestnut, was tied back loosely. She stood nervously, clutching her hands together. At her side was a photograph of a little boy, perhaps 5 years old, smiling with missing teeth. This, the auctioneer declared, is Emily Carter. A single mother. She offers herself in an unusual arrangement. She seeks security for her child, and in return, she offers the promise of bearing an heir. Murmurs spread across the room. Some laughed softly, some shook their heads. But Khalid's eyes stayed fixed on her. She did not look glamorous, nor desperate in the way some might expect. Instead, she looked determined, as if she had made peace with her decision. The bidding began. Numbers rose quickly, tossed into the air like careless jewels. Khalid sat still at first, watching, listening. Then, when the moment came, his voice cut through the room. 10 million. The hall went silent. No one raised the stakes after that. The gavel fell, and the deal was sealed. Emily did not meet his eyes until they were alone in his car. The city lights flashed across her face, showing both relief and fear. "You don't know me," she said softly. "I know enough," Khalid replied, his voice calm. "You want security for your son. And he paused. "I want a family." Her shoulders sank, as though the truth was too heavy to hold. Over the weeks that followed, Khalid arranged for Emily and her son, Daniel, to move into one of his estates. It was a sprawling villa near the sea, filled with marble halls and quiet courtyards. At first, Emily seemed lost in its size. She would sit on the balcony, staring at the horizon, while Daniel ran through the gardens with bursts of laughter that startled the servants. Khalid watched them both from a distance. He was a man used to control, used to deals and contracts. But this was different. He did not know how to speak the language of comfort. When he tried to bring Emily gifts, silk dresses, diamond earrings, she accepted them politely but placed them back in their boxes. One evening, he found her in the kitchen, rolling dough with her hands covered in flour. "You have chefs," Khalid said, puzzled. "I know," Emily smiled gently. "But Daniel likes my bread. It makes him feel at home." Something shifted in him at that moment. He realized home was not made of marble or chandeliers. It was made of warmth, of small hands tugging at your sleeve, of bread rising in the oven. Weeks turned into months. Khalid grew closer to Daniel first. The boy was curious and fearless. He asked endless questions about the world, about the desert, about the stars that glittered over the sea at night. Khalid, who had once spoken only of profits and strategies, found himself explaining constellations and telling stories of his childhood in the dunes. Emily watched them from the doorway, her eyes softening. One night, after Daniel had fallen asleep, Emily spoke to Khalid on the balcony. The air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine. "You wanted an heir," she said carefully. "But Daniel already is one. He is my life, and if you wish, he could be yours too." Khalid turned to her, surprised. "I thought you offered yourself. A child to be born." She nodded. "That was the agreement. But sometimes, what we truly need is already here. You don't need to wait for another child to feel like a father. You already are one to him." The words sank deep into Khalid's heart. He looked at the sleeping boy through the window, his chest rising and falling peacefully. For the first time in years, Khalid felt the silence inside him break, replaced by something tender and alive. The gentle twist was not in the contract, nor in the promise of wealth. It was in the discovery that love cannot be bought. It grows, quietly, in the spaces between shared moments. Khalid never asked Emily again about bearing another child. Instead, he poured his heart into raising Daniel as his own. He taught him patience, guided him through studies, and listened to his small victories with pride. Emily, too, found herself softening toward Khalid. Beneath his stern exterior, she saw a man who longed not for power, but for belonging. Slowly, their lives wove together like threads in a tapestry, each day adding color, each night stitching them closer. Years later, when Daniel stood tall as a young man, he called Khalid father, without hesitation. The word carried no trace of contracts or arrangements. It was spoken with sincerity, born of years of care and trust. On a quiet evening, as the family sat together by the sea, Emily placed her hand over Khalid's. "You discovered something unexpected that night at the auction," she whispered. Khalid smiled, watching Daniel skip stones across the water. "Yes," he said softly. "I discovered that family is not purchased. It is given, freely, when love finds its way." And in that moment, the billionaire who once lived in silence finally knew peace.